Hello everybody. Next up we journey to the moral and intellectual vacuum that is the London Borough of Croydon, where we'll be hosted by Crystal Palace. Kick-off is at the god-awful time of 12:30pm, a time at which I'm told it will be daylight. The reason for this is coverage by BT Sport. So, Palace then. I hate Croydon. I may have mentioned this once or twice in the past. People often complain that my distaste for the place and its inhabitants has been coloured somewhat by the fact that it is the place of origin of the former Mrs. Percy. But that's a bit unfair. There's plenty of other things to dislike about the place even before you take that particular harridan into consideration. It's the current London Borough of Culture, would you believe? No, really it is. I'm sure the Waynes and Waynettas are probably going out to buy their commemorative sweatpants as we speak. What? Oh, right, okay, yes, Palace then. Well, they tootled along okay up to the international break, at which point they were in 11th place. However, a little bit like Leicester, things went a bit Croydon when hostilities resumed. A 3-0 win against Bournemouth on New Year's Eve was very much an outlier amongst their results. Their run from that point saw them draw 5 and lose 7, including losing the last 4 of that run on the trot in the period that took them up to the end of March. The 5 points gained since the turn of the year were enough to limit the positional damage to 1 place up to that point, but the gap between them and the lower sides was narrowing, and 4 defeats in short order was enough for the Palace owners to consider their position. And it was P45 time for Patrick Vieira. In came Roy Hodgson, who, having unsuccessfully battled to keep Watford up on his first return to action after retirement, was persuaded to make a second Sinatra-esque comeback. The effect was immediate, with Palace winning 3 in a row. Having said that, it might be a bit disingenuous for Hodgson to take all of the credit. He couldn't have wished for a kinder fixture list to welcome in on board, his first 3 opponents being Leicester, Leeds and Southampton. Perhaps a more meaningful guide to their form can be gauged from their last 2 results, once the new boss bounce had settled down. That was a 0-0 draw at home to Everton and a 2-0 midweek defeat up at Molineux, which has left them in 12th place with 37 points from 33 games. That's 3 points and 2 places above us, though our less inferior goal difference means that a win of any sort would see us overtake them, possibly up to 12th, depending on other results. Daisy tells me that they didn't actually go daft during the January sales. Maybe there was some uncertainty as to who'd be in charge. The first arrival was Nauru Armada. Now, the midfielder cost the Glaziers something like £9.7 million to bring over from Stuttgart. Marseille-born, he's represented France up to under-18 level, but he hasn't actually troubled the international statisticians for about 3 years. He's been mainly used as a sub so far since his arrival. He was the only arrival on a permanent basis to the first-team squad. There was, however, a loan signing. Albert Sambi Lokonga came in from Arsenal on a deal to the end of the season. A midfield signed during Vieira's reign, it remains to be seen whether his tenure in Croydon will go much beyond the end of the season. He has 1 full Belgian cap and hails from the town of Verviers, which is home to a venue called the Spirit of 66, which, although having absolutely nothing to do with Messrs Moorhurst and Peters, is nevertheless an excellent place at which to watch music. On their injury list, Zaha should be fit to resume his increasingly fruitless attempts to con referees, but Klein and Anderson are both doubts. Let us now adjourn to the wild and wacky world of Association football, and the award for the best TV graphic of the week came during coverage of Leeds versus Leicester, when a stat showing the number of goals scored by teams in the bottom half of the table appeared. It was the presence of Chelsea in that list that had everybody laughing, as their experiment of hiring a manager had failed everywhere, including Chelsea, had thus far resulted in the not entirely unexpected result of them losing 5 in a row. And I'm now reading a headline that suggests that the Spurs board have promised that they will consult Harry Kane over the appointment of their next manager. On past form, this will be any day now. At least that's what they told him, bless him. I wonder if they've told him where he's going in the summer as well. And so let's move on to us. And what an absolute disgrace that refereeing effort was. Clearly some referees are so blinded by the vacuous hype surrounding the so-called top 6 that they'll do anything to assist them. Let's be clear on one point. The game-changing incident was a penalty, Everybody knows that. We can discount the usual hypocritical nonsense from Klopp on the grounds that you know he's lying when his lips move. Crucially, referee Kavanagh knows that that was a penalty. His actions in ignoring it and the actions of the soon-to-be sacked Swarbrick in the VAR bunker were clearly deliberate and worthy of a misconduct charge in their own right. Now, the problem is that Liverpool, like some other sides, have a PGMOL gold card which seems to be played in every match. The penalty incident was just the most visible aspect of a performance that was so embarrassingly slanted, you got the impression that Kavanagh would have fiddled the coin toss had that been possible. Mr. Moyes' comment as to whether that would have been given at Anfield hit the nail on the head. In fact, I'd have gone one further and asked whether that would have been given at the other end of the ground on Wednesday night, and we all know the answer to that one. To coin a phrase, I will love it when they fail to qualify for the so-called Champions League, though that will be tempered by the sadness in not being able to see them get slaughtered the minute they encounter a decent team and an honest referee. Mr. Moyes may face a charge for his comments, the authorities not being keen on statements that question the integrity of their precious officials. Should that occur, and a fine is issued, Mr. Moyes should send the invoice straight over to Kavanagh with instructions to pay the FA direct. If Kavanagh is short of a few bob despite his six-figure earnings from PGMOL, he should perhaps contact Liverpool. I'm sure they'll reimburse him for the services rendered. It was a decent performance, if understandably a little leggy at times, given that it was the third game in 6 days. Soufal continues to improve, whilst Paquetá is starting to look like the player we thought we'd signed in the first place. His goal was a superb effort, combining pacey counter-attacking, crisp and sharp passing interchanges, and a finish that fair warmed the cockles. We're still just the one on the injury list, that being Scamacca, but there may be some tinkering to be done to preserve legs. However, with survival not being mathematically certain just yet, any rotation may be safe for Wednesday's trip up to Manchester City. And so to the prediction. Well, the good thing about Wednesday is that we know that the performance was worth a point, so the players are probably more angry than despondent. They should be. Palace, after their initial run of form after the arrival of Hodgson, are now finding things a little more difficult now that they're playing sides really only a little better than was the case during those first 3 games, since Hodgson stopped tending the roses. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go for an away win. Mr. Winston, please take the £2.50 that I was going to chip into the club so we can buy our own referee. They can take it out of my increased season ticket cost instead, and place it on us to win 2-1. Enjoy the game.